Hearken unto me, O students of Midgard. 'Tis I, thy sage and mentor, Dr. Odinson. Verily, I possess the credentials of a true physician of medicine, at least when mine hand doth not grasp mighty Mjolnir for more than 60 seconds. Nevertheless, on this day, the subject before us be not the healing arts, but rather the ancient gods of yore, most specifically, the storm gods of ages past. Now, methinks thou dost wonder, but wait! Art thou not the thunder god? Art thou not he who commands the storm? Aye, 'tis true, in days long vanished, the peoples of the frozen north didst worship me as such, not knowing that I am merely but a traveler from beyond the stars, from glorious Asgard, an alien realm most advanced, where the science be wondrous and our lifespan stretch across the centuries, and where, just thinking of it makes me wistful for my days across yon rainbow bridge. But nay, let us not become mired in cosmic geography, for Superhero Seminary is a house of biblical learning, not astronomy. Suffice it to say, with ye mortals being the idol-making factories that ye be, there have been many thunder gods worshipped here on Midgard, to whom humanity hath sung hymns and offered prayers most fervent. In the ancient lands of Mesopotamia there dwelt storm gods such as Ishkur and Adad, sometimes inscribed as Hadad. Yet these were but the lesser deities of Babylon's pantheon. The undisputed storm god champion was none other than Marduk. 'Twas he who wielded thunder and wind to vanquish Tiamat, the watery dragon of chaos. And when Tiamat fell before his might, Marduk didst reign supreme o'er all Babylonia. Forsooth, if tales of dragons within the sacred scriptures doth intrigue thee, I bid thee seek out the lecture by mine colleague, the noble Professor Aquaman, here at Superhero Seminary. He is indeed most learned in the lore of the primeval coiling serpents who churned the great abyss. But leaving Babylon, if one were to journey westward from Marduk's realm, the supreme thunder god in the land of Canaan was most assuredly Baal. Some pronounce Baal, but for those who doth speak the king's English, he be known as Baal. However, know ye that the name Baal was not actually a name at all. It meant no more than Lord in the tongue of Ugarit. 'Twas more a title than a name. His true name was Hadad, by which he was known among the Arameans. Yet most clear it is that in the Ugaritic myths sung far and wide, Baal was the thundering storm god who bore the title the Rider of the Clouds. He'd classed that for the Canaanites, thunder was naught but the voice of Baal, and lightning was his weapon most fearsome. Verily, Odin's eye. At least the Greeks, Romans, and my friends the Norsemen had the good sense to portray their thunder gods with proper heavenly musculature. Brother, dost thou even lift? Yet despite such a puny frame, Baal was believed to be the god who crushed the head of the Canaanite chaos dragon Yam, which word also meaneth sea. Again, I direct thee to Professor Aquaman's most excellent lecture. And after slaying Yam in glorious combat, Baal was granted by his father El a palace of his very own. And 'twas from the heavenly heights of this palace window, atop Mount Zaphon, that the Canaanites believed Baal didst send forth the rains that watered their crops. And mark ye well, class, this was of vital import. For unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, there flowed no mighty river to provide irrigation for the lands of Canaan. If the rains came not, the crops would wither and die. If the rains came not, the beasts would perish. If the rains came not, then Mot, the dreaded god of death, would reign supreme. Indeed, 'twas Mot who was said to have slain Baal. And though the Ugaritic text be unclear in their particulars, eventually Baal didst return to life and the rains came once more. But rather than being an historical account like the Exodus of the Hebrews, this was an annual cycle, a never-ending cosmic battle for the land of Canaan. Each year as the dry season commenced, it was believed to be Baal being struck down by Mot. Thus the land became as dust. But in time the storm god would arise and bring rains anew, keeping the relentless Mot at bay. Thus Baal the storm god became Baal the fertility god, he who didst impregnate the earth with his rainy seed, thus bringing forth life from her womb. And mortals being what they are, verily this resulted in fertility cult worship spread throughout Canaan. For if one doth wish to gain the attention of a lusty warrior god so that he might spill his seed and bring forth life, what better method than through feasting, drinking, and carnal pleasures in his presence and that of his consort upon the high places? Such worship would be most appealing indeed to the base nature of mortal man. And 'tis against this backdrop that the Hebrew Bible's use of Baal-like imagery doth stand out as a beacon of light in the darkness of hedonistic excess. Just as they had plundered the Egyptians during the Exodus, the prophets and songwriters of Israel didst plunder the national myths of Canaan and Egypt and Assyria and Babylon for that matter, subverting its pagan imagery in the service of righteous prophetic rebuke. The learned scholars of Midgard call this polemical theology, and it can be found in every major section of the Hebrew Bible, Torah, prophets, and writings. The prophets and the psalmist would oft speak of the God of Israel in ways that were meant to echo, nay, surpass the claims of Baal. As mine friend Christ Wright doth wisely observe, such motifs as the defeat of the sea, command of the winds, crushing of the sea dragon, Rahab, being enthroned over the deep, or the flood, and reigning from the holy mountain, are drawn from the world of Canaanite mythology. But they are also found within the Old Testament, Exodus 15, for example, as a way of expressing and celebrating the reign of Yahweh as king. Clear echoes of this Canaanite mythology are to be found, for example, in Psalm 29:10, Psalm 74, 12 through 14, Psalm 89, 9 through 10, Psalm 93, 3 and 4, Psalm 104, 3 through 9, Habakkuk 3, 3 through 15, and Isaiah 51, 9 through 16. Consider, class, thunder, lightning, which the ancients called fire from the heavens, and the shaking of the earth were all believed to be manifestations of Baal's might. This may illuminate why, when Yahweh doth appear unto Elijah upon Mount Sinai after the prophet's triumphant encounter with the false prophets of Baal, Israel's God is specifically said to not be in the fire, the storm, or the earthquake. Though there be debate among Hebrew scholars as to how Yahweh did finally reveal himself unto Elijah, whether in a still small voice or a roaring, crushing noise, but that be a tale for another day, methinks. Another prophet who doth appropriate Baal imagery to emphasize Yahweh's supreme might is Habakkuk. In the 3rd chapter of his book, Habakkuk doth sing of the splendor of Yahweh with notes struck in the very key of Baal. Now, class, if ye have not seen the series here at Disciple Dojo walking through the Baal myth, upon the conclusion of this lecture, be sure to remedy that post haste. Yet in the meantime, note well the following lines from the Baal myth of Ugarit. Baal opens up the rift in the clouds. Baal emits his holy voice. Baal makes the thunder roll over and over again. Literally, that says Baal repeats the utterance of his lips. His holy voice causes the earth to tremble. At his thunder the mountains shake with fear. The high places of the earth totter. Baal's enemies grasp hold of the trees of the forest. Hadu's adversaries grasp hold of the flanks of the mountains. So the mace Emir whirls in Baal's hand. Like a hawk in his fingers, strikes Prince Yam on the head, ruler Naharu on the forehead. Yam goes groggy, falls to the ground, his joints go slack, his body slumps. Baal grabs Yam and sets about dismembering him, sets about finishing ruler Naharu off. You can find this and the rest of the Baal myth in the Context of Scripture, Volume 1. Now, mine eager students, for thy homework assignment, thou shalt read chapter 3 of Habakkuk's Oracle with the above Ugaritic imagery firmly in thy mind, and for an in-depth examination of how the original Hebrew tongue doth bring it forth even more powerfully, seek ye the Disciple Dojo study of Habakkuk, taught by my ginger-pated friend J.M. Smith, which I shall link in the class notes. They may be found in the video description below. But perchance the clearest of all examples of polemical theology against Baal may be discovered in the Songbook of the Hebrews. Psalm 29 doth appropriate popular Baal imagery in order to demonstrate that Yahweh be the true God of storm, fertility, and all else that Israel was inclined to ascribe unto Baal. So then, class assembled, doth this mean that biblical authors simply plagiarized the Canaanite religion and proclaimed it as their own? I say thee nay! Once more, mine friend Krith doth sum it up most verily. The use of this Canaanite imagery does not mean, of course, that the Old Testament endorsed the myths of El and Baal. On the contrary, the faith of Israel subordinated any affirmations about these gods to the reign of Yahweh. Israel took over the image of Baal's kingship for the purpose of subverting and contradicting it by ascribing all rule in heaven and on earth to Yahweh alone. Indeed, class, there be no storm god but Yahweh. In fact, there be not god of any kind but Yahweh. Any other entity, be they nature, creature, spirit, or even Asgardian, none be worthy of worship save the one whose name be above all names. If you have not subscribed to this channel, by Baldur's beard, what are you waiting for? And until our paths do cross again, spend time here in the hallowed halls of Superhero Seminary learning from our esteemed faculty of super sages. There we end, class. Fare thee well.